We just spent the past week testing 4 World Cup winning downhill bikes in the Whistler Bike Park. Now it's time to place them head to head and see which one is fastest against the clock. Racing the bikes will be myself, Jason Schroeder, and Ryan Burney. Ryan and I raced downhill for many years before becoming working stiffs in the bike industry, but not to toot our own horns, we're still pretty quick on the old downhill bike. We've reeled back our speed since the good old days, but we're gonna do our best to push each bike to see what they are capable of. On the starting line today, we have Santa Cruz's V10, Orbea's brand new Rayon DH, Framework's DH bike, and Specialized's first gen proto downhill bike. All bikes are gonna have the same Crank Brothers Synthesis 2.0 aluminum downhill rims and Maxxis DH casing high roller 3 tires installed. And we are recording times with the free lap timing system. See how she goes. Wish me good luck. All right, it's the following day. We got done with racing yesterday. We actually have not looked at our times yet to see which bike we were fastest on. So let's start with which bike do you think you went fastest on?
I think I went fastest on the Specialized. I come off of a bike that has a similar braking characteristic. The bike also fit really well on the trail and was not fatiguing. And so I felt like I was moving really fast.
Okay. For me, it's a toss-up between the Frameworks and the V10. I felt fast on both of those bikes. The Frameworks is a little bit bigger, longer, taller, all those things that translate to a lot of stability and a bit more, less work on the bike. You can let the bike do a lot of the work for you. The V10 carries crazy good speed, and my average speed felt higher. I also was maybe being a bit more active on it, so it felt like I was doing more. Honestly, at the same time, the Specialized is such a fast bike. I think maybe for me, it took a little bit more energy to tame that speed. So if I were to kind of strip that back, it's hard to say if I was faster on it. The Orbea felt quick as well. I think that to ride a speed that felt comfortable and quick, I might have actually been going a little bit slower, which is an interesting feeling. Let's look at the times and then actually see how that compares what we felt. All right, we just got done looking at the results. Ryan, you thought the Specialized could possibly be the fastest, and it turns out it was for you. If you go back, you think about your run, maybe kind of break down why you think the results turned out that way.
So for me, it was as soon as I got on it again and dropped into the race run, I was just like, wow, this thing just eats bumps. And my eyes didn't bobble hardly at all, especially compared to some of the other bikes. And so that just allowed me to focus on, okay, where am I going? And can I actually get to the line I need to hit? And there's just a lot more calmness in your mind, so you can focus on how to maintain speed. The other thing was it just fit really well in all of the corners. So it was long enough to feel stable, but short enough to where I could really rail a corner and carry my speed out of it.
Totally. Yeah, it's funny. For me, I thought I was fast on the Specialized. I thought that it was quick, but maybe it wouldn't be my fastest time because even though that was my first run, I crossed the finish line feeling the most fatigued. And going back to the week we spent riding the bike, I kind of always kept going back to this bike is really fast, but it has maybe a minimum speed and requires you to push it to really take advantage of how quickly it can go. So riding maybe not as fast, or once you get tired, the bike can kind of start to beat you up a little bit more.
Yep.
I totally agree with the way I fit on the bike and how neutral I was. It's a very consistent bike throughout a course in different sections. I also think that, same as the V10, that and the Specialized are bikes that I can generate speed out of the trail a little bit more than the Frameworks, which, talking about that bike, you and I both finished our runs and were like, dang, this Frameworks might actually be the fastest bike. And then a little bit sad, we were like, oh, we actually weren't as quick on it. But you know, if I look at those runs, the bike is really stable, really fast once the trail was chunky. But those little sections in between that you have to connect and carry speed, I might have just not been rolling as fast.
Yeah, and then also I felt like sometimes I had to force it around some corners, which means, you know, as soon as you start to slide, you're losing speed because you're literally scrubbing off energy. And then if you scrub off energy in a turn going into that straight section, you're not at a high speed or at as high of a speed if you had just railed that turn. And then you're right, getting back up and pumping back up to speed was more difficult on the Frameworks. I think comparing the Specialized and the Santa Cruz is very interesting because they both have very different braking characteristics. So I think the Specialized was really good at feeling smooth in the trail, and you could shut it down very last minute right before you hit a corner, which means, you know, you could trust that it would stop in time before the corner, which means you could brake super late and not worry about it. The Santa Cruz, I felt like I had to brake a little sooner. It broke fine, and it never pitched you forward. I really liked that. It was very smooth through the big bomb holes. Didn't fatigue you because you weren't teeter-tottering. I do feel like the Santa Cruz was at a higher speed, and you could quickly pump and get up to a really high speed like immediately. The Specialized felt like it was lagging a little bit in that, but because I braked later and was able to rail that corner better, I was already at a higher speed, so it didn't really matter.
The V10, to me, it's hard not to ride that bike and start to feel like Jackson Goldstone a little bit. Like, it naturally makes you want to pump the bike and jump a little bit and like try to miss holes. And I think that does translate to a high average speed on the bike, but maybe it takes a little bit different approach to kind of figure out how to maximize what it's good at. The Specialized does have a little bit more of like the plow mentality to me, where it's not that the bike is stuck to the ground or unable to move it around. Like, it is a very nimble bike. But getting into some of those sections where maybe the V10 was carrying better speed just because on the Specialized, I was just kind of hitting things more. After riding these bikes all week, which one do you think you would take home for yourself to ride?
I think it depends on where I live. If I lived in Whistler, I'd probably own the V10. It's so good on the jumps and it's so good on the downhill stuff. Like, not a single bolt came loose. It was quiet. It was comfortable. Very good bike. If I was racing on the East Coast, I think a lot of those tracks are not full-on modern World Cup tracks. So they don't have, the corners aren't as big. The speeds aren't as high. Personally, I'd choose the Specialized. If I was trying to go race World Cups and trying to tackle the modern tracks, I'd choose the Frameworks because I think that bike fits appropriately for how fast and big those tracks are.
Back when I was racing a bunch, I probably would lean more towards the Specialized, the Frameworks. They do well at the high average speed. If I'm just thinking about where I am now, where I go to a couple bike parks every summer, I want a bike I can ride on everything, I'm picking the V10. It has all the flip chips and adjustments to cater it to kind of the vibe you're after. As you mentioned, it's quiet, nothing came loose, which honestly most of these bikes really held together quite well. Yeah, you could go do a dirt merchant lap, and then you could go up to Garbanzo and pick the gnarliest, sketchiest stuff, and you're gonna have a good time on all of that. And I think for where I am now, like, that's what I'm chasing, a bike I can do everything on.
And I wanna make sure I give the Orbea credit because it really impressed me with how good it was in the bike park. And obviously by the times, it did decent. Well, for me, if you're used to that type of braking and that's how you learned how to ride and that's how you want to ride moving forward with a low anti-rise like that, phenomenal bike as well. I just think it maybe isn't as pointy of a bike towards racing. But if I lived in Whistler, that might be my second choice. It just pumps and pops and plays so well, and then you can still go smash through the rough stuff.
Let's close this out with, we were fastest on the V10, and the Specialized, which is two bikes that have won a lot of World Cups in the last couple of years. It's kind of funny it played out for us that way.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, having gotten to ride both bikes?
They're just good everywhere. They're very consistent in how they handle. Their average speeds are high. They're easy to, you don't have to fight them in critical moments. I think that's really important.
Yep.
They're not doing anything fancy. They don't get in the way of the rider. They just let the rider go and try and win a World Cup.
Those are all great points that you're speaking for me, which is very helpful. The Geo, both of them, you fit so even over the bike. Your body weight is always very neutral. You're never fighting the bike. You know, like it's cool to ride both of them and imagine being at a World Cup and kind of seeing the speed you can go on them and how just the predictability, that confidence they give you to go fast. I mean, it makes sense. I guess I was hoping we were going to be faster on something else, but yeah, there's a reason those bikes are so quick. And then maybe we kind of showed that a little bit. If you want to learn more about each of these bikes that we did this test with, as I've mentioned, we've been riding these all week. You can go to the link in the description below. We have full-length reviews of each bike, details what Ryan and I thought. And for more mountain bike and news and reviews, you can go to vitalmtb.com.